It's August, which means
But the sun's shining.
the sun is shining. We've gone live early because we can do whatever we want. Let me start press record.
Are we premature?
Just about. You can get tablets for them. Usually, that's what you usually hear about on podcasts. Adverts for. American podcasts are full of adverts for that kind of product. Although I did spend the journey in to Leeds today, as we started early, listening to a Girls Aloud podcast, and there are less Girls Aloud podcasts than there are Rugby League ones. So obviously, we need to pivot into becoming a Girls Aloud podcast because that will work. What we should start by saying is, before the audience gets here, is congratulations to two groups of people. First, West Leeds for winning the Women's Cup, because Fev have had it taken off them. Do they have to go to Fev Lioness's house and take it off them? I don't know. I don't know how it works. And also congratulations to whoever does the Twitter feed of Castleford Tigers, who no doubt will have done a million brilliant tweets in the past with hilarious pictures and stuff, but have won Tweet of the Week because Sosaya Feki, they revealed Sosaya Feki would be playing a game, revealed by tweeting out the team. So well done to Castleford Tigers Twitter admin, whoever you are.
Man of the match.
I don't think you listen to the programme anymore, but congratulations on that. Image of the Week. England Euro 2022 hero Georgia Stanley embracing her boyfriend Ollie Hashaw-Bolt. The Toulouse Olympique fullback, as the two interviewed together on Sky Sports. We didn't win though, did we?
She did.
She did. Happy birthday Dominic Young, who doesn't have the phone number of Sean Wayne, or doesn't answer his phone. It's like the opposite of Scully in that sense. And that's all.
And Paul Sykes.
Paul Sykes, 500 games.
That's some milestone.
I think I've seen him at least play 2 of them.
And Harrison Hansen.
300 tomorrow, yeah.
Be the third New Zealander to play 300 games.
In Super League.
In Super League.
But did anyone play
because
before
sport
Super
only started when Super League.
Well, here's the thing I've learned recently, is this has happened, and I'm surprised that the Daily Mail and the Daily Express haven't kicked off about it, because I didn't realise this. But obviously, the world started the world started billions of years ago, and then the year 0 and everything after that is like modern history. But it's not called BC anymore, it's called BCE, before Common Era, just in case you don't follow him.
See.
But it still starts at the same time, so it's a bit pointless. I mean, why don't we? It's like, I've always been a fan of perhaps if someone cocked up heritage numbers, you'd have to redo them all because you've missed someone out.
Well, actually, you don't, because you can put them in towards the end with a little asterisk saying, because I do know where that has happened, and it will happen with lots of heritage numbers where you find the odd person who might have played a single game, or matches get reclassified as whether they're first class or not, and then that enables them to have a number.
Because Wales versus Lebanon might not be
It probably won't be if they decide that they're going to use unlimited substitutes.
But probably people will still say it's too complicated. Just play by the rules. Phil, what's this book on? Tell people what this book is, because they want to know. Because you put a book on the table.
Published tomorrow, the story of Jake Thacker, who, if you don't know who he is or who he was, a lot of his oeuvre is on YouTube. He was a wonderful poet, songwriter, who would have been on programmes like That's Life, which you remember with the great Esther Ranson. Born in Leeds, never had a book written about him, quite a cult but enigmatic figure. Was distrustful of publishing houses, particularly the ones in London, for either his music, didn't want to do a book, but his estate decided that a publishing house in his native city of Leeds, who were independent, might be okay, trusted us with it, and it's had a fantastic review in The Guardian today, and there is a lot of interest. The biggest devotee of his work is John Richardson, who, if you start watching some of Jake Thackeray's stuff, you'll realise where John Richardson gets his style from. Richard Stilgoe, who you will have, he's endorsed it, as has Neil Gaiman, the science fiction writer. The way he performed made him quite unique, and now his story comes. It's quite a sad story as well. Doesn't end well for him. But it's 20 years since he died, and it's fantastic to be able to bring a devoted and a new audience to his work. Officially launched at the Wardrobe in Leeds on the 24th of August, all welcome. Although Leeds are playing Huddersfield now, don't they?
Yeah, that'd be rubbish. Now I've just got one of Richard Stilgoe's songs stuck in my head, which is, if anyone knows the words to Porter Cabin TV, do join it. Also out, is it out now? Or is it
in today? Ink Still Wet went in the post to subscribers this very morning.
It's down there in the corner as well. I can't work out where the camera is. The new 4020 magazine. Bish Bash Bosh, Championship takes centre stage, World Cup in motion, Wire on a wobble, win the New England shirt. So if you don't like it, I don't know if you people like it out there. Andy and Stu's Adventures. Do you like the England shirt? I don't know. You can win it. It's in the middle somewhere. I've seen it. There it is.
12.
Win the England shirt. You too can look like Tommy Makinson. See, I recognise him. That's quite good of me. It's blue and red and white. And
Well, the red
it's
is
not
the
Scottish.
sponsor's red, isn't it?
Well, it's on the badge as well. I don't like the badge, but
So yes, both out at the moment. If you have any spare pocket money, Rugby League,
and then
Northern Entertainment.
when it comes to the winter and you've got no fuel, you can burn it.
Yeah, that's a good doorstep.
You know, multi-use. Bit of politics. Welcome to the programme. It's a Saints away strip, says Andy. If they'd made it a red V, you'd say it was a Saints home strip. Remember
That's what they said, that they couldn't do that.
when England played Australia in that Centenary International, which must have been 2008, because the Aussies wore that maroon and blue shirt,
Yes.
and we wore red and white hoops, and everyone said it's a Wigan shirt. So we can't wear it again. But then we played that Northern Union game, didn't we?
We did. Against the All Goals.
Was that a full international? Was that?
No.
'Cause even though it was England versus New Zealand, just in.
No, because it wasn't. It was a hybrid team. It had an up.
Oh yes, I remember now.
And Leeds and New Zealand won't count either, I don't think. And any other, a lot
At all. So if
Well, I think New Zealand will want to play their full squad if they can and give everyone a run out.
so if someone made their Leeds debut in that game, would they get a heritage number? It's too complicated.
Well, if it is designated as a game, Adrian Morley needs to play, and then he will qualify for the Hall of Fame.
Apparently the sound's a bit faint. Turn your sound up.
Well, it's also because we've got the window open because it's quite
Yeah,
warm.
it's warm. Apologies, WCTA. Hopefully we're louder. Or shout.
We'll shout.
But welcome.
We haven't really started yet.
No, I mean we're just doing a bit of admin. Oh, the fence is falling off.
That was my fault.
I mean, this could be the improvements to Wadsworth that are going to happen.
50 million to put the fence back.
Yeah. Oof, dearie me. Saw them coming.
Are they going to widen the pitch? Make it the legal minimum?
Get an artist in. I have turned it up, Andy. I've turned it up on my thing. I've put desktop audio on. It might be even louder, but I don't know. It says it's coming through. If I tap the mic, it will do something. But it's working. So, you know,
She's more than we are.
turn up your telly. Is anything happening in Rugby League? Or I tell you what we do need to talk about this week before we get on to everything else is the influx of British coaches into the NRL next year, because not only is Richard Eager off to New Zealand, because we don't know what he's doing at Leeds at the minute. I've been there the last 2 weekends. I've not seen him. Not even just like watching the doors.
Out in the outside.
Yeah. But Lee Breers, in shock news, is off to Brisbane, which is great that coaches are not going to Rugby Union.
But again, there is this sense that the best of our talent is being attracted to the NRL, and whilst we've seen a player drain recently, I think particularly the Lee Breers one is really interesting because you can actually measure the difference that he's made at Wigan in a very short time. And again, Matty Peat and Chris Radlinski, quite rightly, are extolling the work that he's done. That they are very entertaining to watch at the moment. Their attacking structure is totally different to what it was under Sean Wayne and Adrian Lamb, and a lot of that you can see the hand of Lee Breers in. It's clearly been noticed by Kevin Walters at Brisbane, and that's interesting because again, there is that fine balance, isn't there, between you going over there to promote the best of what we do, but you're also stripping our competition of the people that we need to be the next round of head coaches. But great for Lee Breers. I think it's an opportunity he said he couldn't turn down. He realises himself and has self-acknowledged that perhaps he didn't have as big an international career as he could have done as a player, but he gets the chance to effectively go on tour for an extended period with his coaching capabilities, and I think that's brilliant. It'll be really interesting to watch how Brisbane attack next year and see if you can noticeably determine whether it's any different.
And as he'll be an assistant, he could come back and be a head coach in Super League.
I think
he could be the next coach of Huddersfield or St Helens or something.
Yes, his stock will rise, undoubtedly.
Which is good news, because we don't want to lose people. Because obviously Andy Farrell's now the greatest coach in the history of rugby football, as we know, because Ireland beat the All Blacks the other week, although they're rubbish apparently. And obviously he's too Wigan to be involved in the English Rugby Football Union because it's all public school boards, as Eddie Jones has said, and got told off for it, like Will Carling did that time.
Yes.
They don't like the truth.
Taken around the back and excommunicated.
When's Eddie Jones going to be joining South Sydney or whatever?
Well, he's already put feelers out, hasn't he, saying that's the job I really want.
Absolutely hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. But enough of that nonsense.
But no, Lee Breers is a bigger story than I think it's probably had airtime for, and it's a fantastic opportunity for him, and I'm really pleased. I just wouldn't like to think that the player drain will be followed by the coaching drain.
And he's happy he's left Wigan because he's a Warrington
fan.
Andy, you must be so excited about the game coming up, the big match.
Where's Danny Orr going?
But why was he going?
Well, he's leaving Salford. Does that mean that he's going to go to Wigan, where he used to play, to fill in for Lee Breers?
Could join the fun at Warrington again, couldn't he? Join with his old mate, Mr. Powell. It's all exciting because it's at the moment it's all players leaving and going elsewhere for next year, and it is a bit odd. I'm really looking forward to next year at Insert Club here, but I've still got a great job to do here at Insert Other Club where I'm currently being employed.
But then all these moves, because of the transfer deadline, have been known for ages. So there isn't anything we're hearing that is coming as a huge surprise because these deals were done ages ago.
I tell you what, when they announced that Jacob Miller's not going to be at Wakefield next year, no one knows where he's going, obviously, because he said on the telly the other week. I won't believe it. I will not believe it. It is a bit daft, isn't it? Because, as you say, we all know these things are going to happen. And you may as well just announce. I know they want to announce them at certain times for reasons, but when everyone knows, it does seem a bit pointless. When Jenna Brooks says on the telly, "So you're playing for Cass next year?" What do you think?
And the thing is that, again, I understand the PR value of a big signing. Sometimes it's worth announcing things if you haven't had a good result the weekend before. But once it's all in the public domain, it's almost like you're trying to create a new story where it isn't there.
It's the Castleford press conference tomorrow, and I think it clashes with my other plans. Otherwise, I would go and say, "So, Lee Radford, you've just re-signed Danny Richardson. How much are you looking forward to seeing him play alongside somebody else in the halves next year, like Callum McLaren? He's at the club. Could be him. Could be him.
Hope it is, because he deserves a good run from his injury nightmare.
I jest. Because I'm genuinely, unless players are coming to my club, and even then, I've never heard of half these people anyway. It's all a bit.
But of course,
Liam Sutcliffe's off to the whole plan.
Very difficult for clubs towards the bottom of the league to plan anything, because how can they offer a contract if they don't know what division they're going to be?
I mean, what are they going to do next year? If they go up, what are they going to do?
Sign some British players.
Sign some British players. I hope there's some available.
I think they've got 4 already earmarked.
But what if they don't go up?
Well,
they're still going to sign them because they may as well.
No, but I suspect that then makes the removal of some high earners there currently, if they don't go up, more of a priority.
Or could just sign for Wakefield or Toulouse or whoever, or Warrington, whoever
what will probably happen.
doesn't go down at the bottom.
But that's an interesting one that the Bash threw up. Is it now a foregone conclusion, that Featherstone will be in the £1 million game, or do we look at the form of Halifax and Batley and perhaps say they have more than an outside chance of upsetting the apple cart? Or do we assume that Lee are so good at the moment that automatically means that whoever they play, even if it's Featherstone, it's a shoe-in? And I'm not sure either of those scenarios are dead set certain.
We've got thousands of listeners to this podcast.
What, both of them?
Yeah, and Ian, I asked earlier on Twitter, have you got any questions for us? And 3 people replied. Ian is a Halifax fan, and he said, "Are Simon Griggs and Joe Keys the Championship coach and player of the year so far?" To which my honest answer would be, I've not watched enough of the Championship to give you an answer, but from everyone I hear, they tell me Joe Keys is brilliant, and it's hilarious because all the Bradford fans wish he was still there, and he's not, and he's tearing up the field with the Panthers Panthers in third in the table at the moment, behind big spending Featherstone and Lee. So
I think
you're winning the league.
I think it's safe to say that the coach who is the best of the part-time teams deserves a special recognition to be in touch with those who virtually have a licence to spend at will. As for Joe Keys, I hope he plays for Ireland in the World Cup. There's been a lot of talk this week about eligibility. That's one of the other stories, and the chance that Luke Keary and Richie Myler might be the Ireland halfback pairing is fantastic, and every team seems to be strengthening. But I hope there's a place for Joe Keys in there as well.
I didn't realise Richie Myler was Irish.
He well, some of his parentage must be.
And he played in the last World Cup. Did he play in the last World Cup final? Was he in the squad?
Luke Gale played.
He was in the squad, wasn't he? He was at the World Cup, wasn't he? A very complete. 2017 does seem a long, long time, and I'm trying to forget about it.
Because it was a long, long time.
It was, but he's
Irish.
Irish.
No, I think Halifax deserve recognition. I think Batley have done an outstanding
Well, that's the other
job,
one, isn't it? That's the other obvious name to throw into the mix there, isn't it?
I think you'd have to look at their respective squads and what they've cost and make a judgment as to whether Simon Griggs or Craig Lindegaard has done a better job. Either of those have done their clubs absolutely proud and should be extremely pleased with how the season looks like it's going to finish. I'm not sure. I think Barrow could maybe cause an upset. York seem a little bit inconsistent for me, but again, when they win promotion, I'll come back on here and say York were by far the most consistent team in the division.
Well, as we know, is if York, and genuinely I'm going to do this, if York City Knights win the League Leaders Shield in a couple of weeks against Leeds in the Women's Super League, because I'm going to be there, I think, I'm going to ask the players if we can have a medal, because they all like my tweet saying they weren't going to finish in the top two. So it's all down to me.
Yeah.
Richard Diller yesterday on the programme last week, so I'm taking the credit.
What motivation?
I know. If people really think
you're an influencer.
I know. Oh, if it's not Leeds winning everything because I said Saints were better than them, then it's this now. Danny can say it on the programme, so it must be true. So yeah, there's your answer.
In women's rugby league.
Oh, what's that one?
Caroline Colley going from Bedford, who are in the playoffs.
Yes,
to Huddersfield, who won't be in the playoffs. I'm playing the.
Well, that is the big running now in the women's season. I know we're jumping all over the place because that's what we do. There's no
it's
structure
just good to be together.
It's no structure, no vision, no awareness.
You sound like IMG. No structure.
No structure. It just happens. Where am I finding it? Finally, it's West Leeds. What's West Leeds like? Is it nice? Because obviously I know North Leeds is a desolate wasteland and the South Leeds is
I
the
suspect
best
if you ask Liz Truss, who will have intimate knowledge of West Leeds as she does of North Leeds.
So anyway,
it's a less salubrious suburb, but with fantastically honest people.
Where's Queens? Which part of Leeds is
Queens don't exist then.
You don't fancy. So the Betfred Women's Super League Group 1 table. Snappy table. Leeds are top. York are second. Saints are third. Wigan are fourth. Basically, the race is to finish first, not because you get a shield or a medal, but because you get the quote-unquote easier semi-final.
St Helens have got a game in hand?
Yes.
And
well, everyone does apart from Leeds and Huddersfield now.
Yeah, I'm saying York have got a game in hand.
Huddersfield play Saints this week, so that'll be Huddersfield's season finished. York play Wigan, and then it's...
Which could be a dress rehearsal.
Yeah.
For the playoffs.
And then it's Leeds versus York, and I'm guessing Saints versus Wigan is the final game, because I don't know. But, so yeah.
Lauren Beeville.
Sorry to Wigan,
first try in Women's Super League for Wigan. You can read about her in there.
In the magazine, yeah. And perhaps potential plans for next year, which are very interesting. In the other games, some teams won and lost. Wakefield lost to Bradford 26-0. I don't know which players played for the other side the other week. Cass lost to Barrow 78-0, and Warrington beat Featherstone 44-12, which you could have watched on the Our League app, but which you could have watched Leeds versus Saints, which was a good game. Not the best game the two teams have played against each other, but it was a good game. And Courtney Winfield Hill's try was worth the price of the admission alone, especially if he didn't pay to get in. But it wasn't good enough to get in our league top tries of the week.
Because it wasn't on our league.
No. But it was a good try. Great vision from Georgia Roach and awareness from Courtney Winfield Hill.
And a nice size thing.
Yeah, it was a very nice try. But Saints
But a
were
consolation try.
Yes.
Because Saints have been far too good.
I don't know who's going to win the Super League. I think it's still going to be Saints. But if I
They
say
seem
that
to have got their confidence back because they've beaten York and Leeds in consecutive weeks.
That's what he said. The coach after the game, I can't remember what he said now. People have been writing him off, that was it. The other thing
Was that you?
I don't know. I don't think I wrote Saints off. I think I'm just anti-York, aren't I? So it's all right. Elsewhere, Norm de Plume has asked about the RFL leadership because John Davidson, sometimes of this parish, released a story earlier today to his Patreons that there might be a shifting power at the top of wherever Redhall is these days between Mr. Rimmer.
Well, it's going to be Odsal, isn't it?
Well, the Rugby League headquarters of the world. We're going to build a stadium in Odsal.
£50 million levelling up. Odsal, everything there. But the RFL at the bottom.
If we needed a national Rugby League stadium, considering all the Rugby League stadia that actually exist in bricks and mortar, and we said, right, we're going to play all our big games here, apart from obviously the Challenge Cup final, Grand Final, whatever. But we're going to play
the £1 million game, which is definitely going to be the home of the team that finishes highest.
You know where I'm going to say it should be, even though
even though it doesn't have a beach.
No, it's Headingley. Headingley's the best stadium we've got as a pure Rugby League stadium, but you don't need to build one in Bradford which won't get built, just like all these others. Don't upset them.
Well, I think going back to the question and the article from Mr. Davidson, I think it's safe to say that when there is the reappraisal of what the realignment means, there were going to be some people who perhaps won't use the word surplus to requirement because they're clearly. They're not like an absent Prime Minister, are they? They're actually there doing a job.
It's gone wrong. Sam says, don't even start bringing politics into our game. Had enough of that rubbish with football.
Well, it's in our... If there wasn't politics, there wouldn't be the game of Rugby League.
It was just taking the mickey
born out of politics.
It's true.
But I think that it's safe to say that there may well be, once IMG come in, a need to rationalise the people that currently work in other areas. I wouldn't be surprised if some people who are at Super League with positions will be, it'll be, well, do we need you helping to promote the game if IMG are helping to promote the game? It'd be the same at the RFL. We've got a new chair of the commercial board. Do we need as many RFL people on a board? In which case, as with every business at the moment, it'll be all about cost saving. And it could well be that somebody senior at the RFL, when the rationalisation is finally, it's all agreed, but I'm not sure the final details of who's going to be sitting where have all been sorted out. There's 4 non-executive directors still to sit on this commercial board. I think they may well turn around and say, as a cost-saving exercise, we can relinquish a couple of people from their roles because they're being duplicated.
Are they going to build that museum at Bradford as well? In the brand new National Rugby League Stadium?
Well, it would make sense if there ever was going to be a national stadium to have a national... Twickenham is the classic example, isn't it? It's not the most accessible place to get to in London, but because it is the national stadium of Rugby Union, the museum is at Twickenham. So it should be part of a bid.
Could be. Carson says, did I miss the important sarcastic remarks? No, they're throughout. They're constant. They don't end. Andy, the Warrington fan. Oh no, right, Kevin first, because it's a conversation. I mean, you can read it on YouTube yourself, but if you're not watching it live, you listen to the podcast, then you won't know this is going on. Kevin says, Andy, you not trust Lee Breers, then he's done a great job for Wigan. You can't deny that, mate. Andy says, his snap was all over Wigan's attack. I've never seen Wigan play that way before. Best attacking rugby I've seen there since the late 80s. I mean, that is praise. That is high praise.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think Wigan have been a joy to watch this year, and that's a phrase you didn't think you'd hear yourself saying.
No.
As have Salford. I have to say, Paul Rowley again with resource that he's got, with the fact that it was the first time for a month this weekend that he named a 21 player squad. They have played in recent weeks some of the best rugby it's possible to see.
They are a breath of fresh air.
Leeds ain't doing bad either, with the style that Rowan Smith's playing.
It's all very, when you praise Wigan, I said it to Liam Fowle, didn't I, before the semi-final. Not underdogs, but people actually liking Wigan. We all used to hate Wigan back in the day. I mean, secretly. But there may be pictorial evidence of being a Wigan shirt. Thankfully, there isn't any pictorial evidence of being a Bradford shirt around. So I've never got that far. But now I'm rambling about something. No one knows what I'm talking about. So I mean, Kevin's now found out that Andy is not a Wigan fan, so make sure we've got that cleared up, which is good. So we've got a national stadium being built. We've got change at the top of the RFL. All the coaches leaving to go to the NRL. Eligibility. We've got to talk about.
Well, no, only because I think we're going to get a fantastic World Cup. I thought we were anyway. But genuinely, every person who declares for a country... now, Valentine Holmes, who was fantastic in the last World Cup, declares for the Cook Islands. They are undeniably stronger. It doesn't necessarily weaken Australia, but it doesn't half improve the Cook Islands. Now, Joseph Papali is saying, not only am I playing for Samoa with the Penrith lads that we already know about, but I know of other players that I've spoken to that haven't yet declared for... So fantastic. So Samoa could be the next Tonga. Tonga are not going to be any less strong than we've seen them, having now beaten Australia, New Zealand, Great Britain, Uncle Tom Cobley. PNG were brilliant when they beat Fiji. I think there's still some Fijians to declare as well. I just think it's exciting. Ireland clearly are hinting Jed Corcoran as their coach that they've got more people to unveil, along with Luke Keary, who again, he's on the fringe of that Australian team, but he's going to be playing for Ireland. Victor Radley is massive, I think, for England. Maybe back row isn't a position that at the moment we're short of players, but you put in that level of quality and that competition for places, that immeasurably helps the cause of England to stand up to Samoa in the first. There are games now that you can look at the fixtures and go, I want to see England and Samoa, because I'm hearing a lot about who might be playing, and that's great. I think the World Cup's going to be fantastic.
And you throw in, Dom Young not taking the calls of Sean Wayne because he seems like he wants to play for Jamaica in the World Cup, and that is a huge get, as they say, for them.
Well, even the wheelchair World Cup, Jack Brown is back. Jack Brown, who was the Wheel of Steel.
Yes.
I think by general consensus, the best player we have produced in recent times in this country. Great respect to people like Tom Halliwell, who wouldn't be far off that title. But Jack Brown was acknowledged when he went to Australia 2 years ago as being our best player because he was the man of steel. He's come back. He's rejoined Halifax to play in the World Cup. That's fantastic. That gives us a real chance to say the French might be favourites, but we're going to have a squad of 10 that will be as good, if not better than them, and we can get behind them. An England team could win a World Cup.
Someone needs to remind me, because now I've had at least 2 opportunities and I keep forgetting to ask. Next time I see Martin Coyne or anyone wheelchair-wise, how do the players line up on the field? Because what are their positions? And because obviously you don't have 13 players out there, so it's different numbering or whatever. Not that it's important.
I think it's a tactical thing. I don't think they have positions. I think on certain drives, player A will take the ball into the opposition. Player B will then be designated to take the second drive. I don't think, like, you're a prop, you can only drive the ball in. They're multi-skilled. Not
like when I was trying to cover rugby union back in the day. I could never get out of my mind rugby league. It was very confusing. That it was just rubbish, wasn't it? It was second division rugby union.
I think the other thing you briefly mentioned about Georgia Stanway is the impact on women's sport of the Lionesses winning will give a huge boost to the women's competition. And whilst it's still true, I think the NRL kicks off in a fortnight, women's NRL. Their second season in 2022 as they catch up. They're going to come here absolutely honed and ready to go, as are New Zealand, the bulk of their best players playing in a women's NRL. But there's going to be extra eyeballs on England women's rugby league team to see if they can emulate the Lionesses, which is fantastic.
And the good news is that at the end of the women's season over here, the players from at least all three clubs. Let's not pretend that anyone else isn't going to get to the final in the Saints, Leeds or York, but because they've got Leeds York the final week of the regular season, then 2 of those 3 will meet in the second round, or in the first round of the playoffs, and then in the grand final. 3 big, intense weeks for at least, hopefully, 1 or 2 of those sides. So exciting.
No, it's brilliant. I think the eligibility
Still, I think we're going to win the World Cup, but it doesn't matter because at least we'll be
no,
as ready
but
as we can.
I think eligibility is something to keep your eye on, because each nation is going to have access to players that is going to elevate the overall standard of the competition. There'll be more games across all 3 variants, 4 if you include the PDRO, where we don't know the results in advance. We can't predict even necessarily who is going to be a quarter finalist. Because you're looking at Ireland now and thinking, well, New Zealand probably should win the group that they're in, but Ireland, Lebanon, Jamaica, if they're all going to be declaring top line players, they're games you're going to go and want to see.
And now we're getting the pre-tournament warm-up matches announced: Wales versus Lebanon in Swinton.
Back to the great days of Station Road as a test match venue.
Although it's in Sale.
Yeah, I know. If Martin Kellner's listening, Station Road.
Is it Wales Island Wheelchair playing in Halifax?
In Halifax.
There is England Fiji obviously at Salford.
Ireland Women and the Canadian Ravens
at Orrell,
in Orrell.
which I do think as you should probably play that at their, I don't want to say proper ground because that sounds disrespectful to Orrell, but I hope people know what I mean.
There are other fixtures that may not have been announced yet, but expect Scotland to be playing, and certainly expect Greece to be playing in warm-up matches.
Greece is indeed the word.
And that is another good news story from late last week.
They're a sport now, they're actually recognised.
Yes, considering everything they've been through, clandestine games and trying to put various authorities and policemen off the scent of where they may or may not be playing, and kicking off at midnight and not turning the floodlights on until 2 minutes before. All of that now has gone. Not only have they been recognised and come away from modern pentathlon, which for some reason was in charge of, well, we know the reason, a nefarious person, but they are acknowledged in their own right, and the good thing is they can apply for the kind of funding that other nations get for a recognised sport. They're allowed to go into schools. They can set up women's rugby league in the open, and I think one of the first games that they're going to be playing is a women's international in Greece. Fantastic, brilliant news.
Modern pentathlon, which must be the most is that an oxymoron? It's not modern at all. It's involving like shooting and horses and stuff.
Jousting.
Yeah, I think it's been overtaken by triathlon, really, hasn't it, as I say. But it still gets in the Olympics, and because we generally win a medal in it, it still gets on the BBC. Can we get can the International Rugby League not try to get a Sevens Rugby League tournament in 2024 Commonwealth Games, that's Andy, even if it's just an exhibition? Kevin then immediately says Rugby League 9s for the Commonwealth Games.
It's in there. Latest update. I don't think the Commonwealth Games is going to happen, but they are the next one is in 2026 in the state of Victoria. I think Ballarat is going to be where it's centred, but Melbourne is having some of the events, and I think there are talks, but Rugby Union Sevens is so sadly well established that Nines probably won't. Troy Grant is set on Rugby League Nines being part of the Brisbane Olympics in 2032.
He's getting his Excel spreadsheet out and getting it sorted.
But he thinks because that is a Rugby League city of note, that either as a demonstration event or depending on... The trouble is, you only get the ability to put your sport in the main games depending on the number of nations that play it, and we haven't reached that global threshold yet.
I'm always surprised that darts and snooker, they're popular in the Commonwealth. If cricket's in, and bowls is in there. Well, I think Vanuatu won the bronze in the beach volleyball, and I watched their semi-final against Australia because there was nothing else on TV, and it was obviously the last thing at the games won that. Come on, Vanuatu! Come on, they're a rugby league nation.
Question then. Yeah. Talking of the Commonwealth Games, did you watch basketball 3x3?
No. Well, I saw it, but I saw your tweet about it. I think it's a kind of. Basketball just. I don't know. It just doesn't.
I don't know anything about
to me.
Basketball. I don't follow the NBA. I appreciate how big it is. I think that what they did in spreading basketball is a model that other sports can look at, because it was so American based, and now it is the second biggest sport on the planet after football. So it's massive in China, and they've taken it into the Indian subcontinent. So the way they have promoted basketball is something that we can learn from. But this 3x3s, for those who are not devotees of basketball, was just ridiculously exciting. For those who didn't see it, it's half a court, one net, clearly 3 on each side, played outdoors, 10 minutes. It is a bit like the 2020 cricket element is how far can you hit it. The basketball element for 10 minutes is how many baskets can you score. But if you don't fully follow the sport, it's ridiculously exciting. Both gold medal finals went to the very last play, the men's in overtime. Brilliant. Should we be looking at some derivative that isn't 13 aside?
What I didn't understand was when it was in the Olympics, they had that and actual basketball, which seems a bit pointless to have both in. But at least it was just the one in this one. Probably because you wouldn't be able to fill full teams, which is the whole point of these things, isn't it? You build up a player base by playing smaller sided games.
That 3x3 basketball was outside in a court that was full, brilliantly lit, the drama of the sunset and all that, and suddenly, even if you didn't follow it, you thought, there's something here, it can attract me for 10 minutes. The going back to the women's football again, the crowd, 87,000 at Wembley, not a hint of trouble. No. The atmosphere coming over the television, it never lessened. It was slightly more high pitched than normal. It was never threatening. We do need to investigate. So, with the greatest respect to the Bash, which is written about extensively in here, and a lot of people have talked about. I think the one thing we've taken from this year's event is needs to be a destination location, and whilst Headingley may be a great facility, too easy to just turn up for your game and go get all of that. What do you want it to be? Therefore, where do you want it to be staged? I think the other thing that was obvious by being there for one of the days was we could predict the audience. There weren't many kids there, there weren't too many young people there, there weren't a lot of women and girls there, and when the Leeds St Helens women's game finished on Sunday before the men's game, must have been 5,000-6,000 people watching, and the bulk of that audience, yes, there were the traditional Rugby League fans who could identify with the teams that were playing, but there were a lot of girls there, there were a lot of different people who you wouldn't normally see. That's what IMG have got to address.
When I went to that game at Sheffield, I think I've mentioned it on the podcast before, but I'll mention it again anyway. When I went to Sheffield for the Dutch versus the Swedes game, which was brilliant because of all the atmosphere by the competing nations. And what was strange was, I can't think of a time I've been to, apart from the Olympics, I went to Brazil, New Zealand in the football at St James's Park. And you're there as a neutral, and I was only there because it's the Olympics. And I didn't think I was going to get to the Olympic Stadium. Yeah, I got to see Neymar. I didn't think I'd get to the Olympic Stadium, which I did because I bought tickets to the Paralympics later on. So that was the Olympics are in the country, I'm going to go. And it was great, absolutely, blah, 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 whatever. This was a completely different atmosphere because it's the highest, apart from the World Cup, it's the highest level of the sport. And those who were not fans of the Netherlands or Sweden were not the same kind of people generally. I say everyone's different than when I've been to Bramall Lane in the past. I've sat on the cop at Bramall Lane in the past to watch the Blades, and it's completely different fans. Of course, you expect that. We were having a Chinese before the game on London Road, and the family next to us who were talking about going to their first ever football match were not the kind of people you would expect to go to watch Sheffield United in the Championship. And that's not trying to generalise or stereotype people who do, because obviously
really
every walk of life does. But and when you go see women's rugby league, it is a different audience to an extent. The ones who are going to watch the game,
and so is 100 cricket, whether it's a viable concept or not. It's a different audience. So was 3x3 basketball. So the question to throw out there to both of the people that are listening, what do we need to do to make the sport more attractive to a different audience? Because our current one is a finite audience, which Craig Lingard told us on the show 2 weeks ago.
You may as well take his idea of the six-a-side with random players chosen from random teams and just have a go, because the bash as it is at Leeds this year, I don't know if it was a financial success or not, but it didn't appear to be.
It was the lowest overall attendance, so there must be a finite point where it's costing money rather than making money.
So if you did something completely different, and we had the Nines at Blackpool in the past, didn't we? When they binned off, one of the stupidest decisions ever made by this sport, and I know that's a completely hyperbolic statement, is taking the Northern Rail Cup final away from Blackpool and moving it to Halifax. And that's no disrespect to Halifax, which is a fine venue, but what a stupid idea that was. And even if, I don't know why it was, maybe you couldn't use Blackpool that year, choose somewhere else, not bloody somewhere we're going to go anyway. Have a sevens tournament, have a nines tournament, have eights, 11s, whatever, something different on half a pitch, have two games going on at the same time. Maybe you've got chaos with the ball going off onto the different pitch, that you can work it into the rules, because you can do whatever you want and just invent something.
I just think we need, part of IMG's brief should be, how do you attract the next generation of people? And it might not be solely the men's running game as it currently exists.
T20 cricket is 20 years old now or something. But before that, I remember, just strange things that you remember. They trialled something called Cricket Max, which was pretty much what T20 became, but there was an area of the pitch, I think it was over the bowler's head, where if the ball landed in it, you got double runs. So they've always been trying to work out what the next format is which will catch the attention of the public, and obviously the 100 is the latest, and obviously had a lot more money spent on it than that, because no one remembers Cricket Max, but we can try something. If it doesn't work, and we just go...
Talking of cricket, because I am old, I can remember when one day cricket first started, so there was only championship cricket and test match cricket, and then we got things like the Gillette Cup and the John Player League, and one day cricket was just an amazing, for somebody who was relatively young at the time, you wanted to go to Bradford Park Avenue on a Sunday and watch Yorkshire play Hampshire, because Gordon Greenidge and Andy Roberts were playing for Hampshire, and you wanted your team to desperately beat them, and it felt different and exciting. And whilst as a school kid you probably couldn't spend a lot of time going to a county championship game, to go with your dad on an afternoon to a venue, Bramall Lane or wherever, you probably wouldn't normally go to, and see a whole format of cricket in one afternoon. It's very hard to get over on something like this, how exciting that was. That's what we need to recapture.
Yeah, watching Yorkshire play one day cricket in the 90s was not exciting, because they were in the
70s it was
bad. No, the 90s were rubbish. Carl says, Nines were an exhibition tournament the last Commonwealth Games in Brisbane. There was the one in Scotland as well.
Yeah, there are two, the last two. But the one in Glasgow was before the games had started. It was almost like a side tournament. The one in Brisbane, I think, ran while the games was being played. And the one in Brisbane, when you look back at who the Australian team were that won it, had people like David Fafita, the other one in it. I think Katoni Staggs scored the winning try, who of course now is Tongan anyway. But there were the first one that was won in Glasgow was won by PNG, and they went back as absolute heroes, because it was the first global tournament that PNG had won in a nation where rugby league is the national sport.
Did I read someone called Tonga was playing for Tonga or something? Did someone make that up? Did you make that up, internet?
No, I think that was Mr. Mascor. He would know. He would know.
Has he ever need any more teams this week? He's in Oldham this week, by the way. His ongoing book tour continues. Kevin didn't understand why only the women play cricket at the Commonwealth Games, because there's no time for the men to play. That's why. They play too much cricket. They've had to shorten the women's 100 this year because they played in the Commonwealth Games. The women's 100, which some games are being played after the men this year, which is interesting as a concept, because last year was the other way around. And we didn't win that. And we didn't win the netball. It's not coming home. Netball is not coming home. Kevin agrees that Blackpool's the best place for the Magic weekend. Andy says Benidorm would work. Have they got a pitch?
Well, the Turkish beach volleyball competition was played last weekend. 300 people.
They've got a
7 nations, including Iran.
They play beach rugby in Mallorca, so we can go there and play at Real Mallorca's home. I think some English. We'll go to Mallorca. I haven't been there for a while.
Play on Southport when the tide goes out.
What has changed at London Broncos? Brackets results are improving. Change coach. Have they got any more players? I mean, obviously that's a massive result. 44-0. As Dennis Pett said afterwards, if they'd have had a goal kicker, it would have been worse. But they didn't.
No, I again, maybe it's just a coach that comes in and says, this is how we're going to play. They have got some very good players, and they've got some really good youngsters coming through, but I don't know enough about Mike Eccles and haven't seen them regularly enough to answer that question. But I know somebody who does go and watch them every week, our good friend Alex, so if he's listening and wants to tell us what's changed, that would be good to know.
Well, Phil, let me give you the great opportunity this Sunday, because thanks to the Rugby Football League and our league, they're £4.95 to watch London versus Workington, so now you can watch them in the
Would that be relegated, Workington?
In the privacy of your own home.
Right.
You can't watch Rochdale versus Cornwall this week. I don't know, maybe Rochdale Football Club have banned the Hour League cameras, I don't know.
In the ongoing spat as to why the England-Fiji game couldn't be played at Rochdale.
In 2 bald men fighting over a comb. It's Rochdale Hornets versus Rochdale Football Club. Brad Journo, who I assume he's a journalist. How did you get into journalism? Have you got an RFL media pass? How do you lose an RFL media pass? The Broncos sacked Jermaine and got rid of their League One talent. Also the same reason the Scholars' results were improved, because they got their players back. There you go. Can we be positive about the Women's Super League South? I think we always are.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we've said there should be a game between. Or one of the teams should be in the actual.
Well, I think there's a better way of doing it, and that is to have a composite team that represents Super League South in the Super League. So, like London Roosters are for the wheelchairs, you would have Southern Superstars, which would cherry pick the best. So Caroline Colley wouldn't have to go and play for Huddersfield. She could play in Super League for the Southern. You're only taking 13 players, so you still have your Cardiff and your Army and your Gloucestershire and whoever is coming up through the ranks. Torfine Tigers, Women's Rugby League Bedford have done a fantastic job. They would still play in the Southern Super League, but in the Betfred Women's Super League, you would have the Southern Bells or whatever.
You can probably come up with a better name, but in fairness to Phil, he's come up with better names than any of the 100 teams have got. I keep wanting to call them the Northern Powerhouse.
Except that doesn't exist.
No,
the Northern level is up.
Remember that? It's when you said Ballarat, it made me laugh, because the only thing I know about Ballarat, and I didn't know about it.
Gold Panic.
They've got a greyhound track. Do the Australian greyhounds in the morning. Ballarat.
I think it's
Toowoomba,
one of those towns where gold was once found, and it was built on that.
Nowra, all these places. Warrigal. No, they do exist. I've seen them on telly. Albion Park.
But I think that would be a way to integrate the best of what is starting to happen in the south in what is already existing in the north. I'd be a big advocate of that, and I think again it would be a great experience for the women's Super League teams to at least once get on a bus and have a trip away.
I mean, I'm going to ask this question, and again, this is me asking a question hypothetically. I think I already know the answer, but if they're showing London Workington on Sunday, and as mentioned by Brad, London are playing Bedford in the Women's Super League afterwards, are they going to show that on our league if they're doing the other game?
I hope so, because that's a semi-final, so that would be a great game.
I mean, again, it's one of these
if
questions
the
where
camera's in position and a commentator's already there, that could be why it's behind it. Although $4.95, I think you're asking a lot for
we haven't worked out.
Most of the people that would be interested in London and Workington would be at that game.
If the reasoning that they showed Warrington Featherstone on Sunday in the Women's Super League 2 was because they were going to show the PDRL game afterwards, which I can understand the cost reasons for, and And that's why they didn't show Leeds versus Saints, which I swear I saw tweets earlier in the week saying was going to be on our league. I saw.
It was. No, it was.
But
I know the person that was earmarked to commentate for it.
But on Saturday they showed at the same time 2 sets of community finals at the same time.
But I think this is something IMG will be taking over with their 7 league arm, their digital arm.
Oh, Brad says it's going to be on our league. He thinks it's on our league. If it's not Brad, we won't blame you. Don't.
No, it'd be great if it was.
Yeah.
It'd be great.
Is there any other news? I mean, this is the bit where I say, is there any other news? Something will have happened and I don't know what's happened.
There's been a lot of consternation about the disciplinary process.
Not again.
Which...
it's Aidan Seas, wasn't it? Because
I think...
You buy the frivolous appeal t-shirts I've designed, by the way.
Forget the... I mean, every club seems to have a gripe at the moment with the disciplinary process. Been thinking about it also undermines the referee. So if you take the game that we were at on Sunday afternoon,
yes,
there are 3 players that have been banned out of that game for incidents that were not picked up at the time. I think that undermines the referee because at least 2, possibly all 3 of those incidents were seen at normal time by the referee and their touch judges and adjudicated on. So I'm now rapidly coming to the conclusion that for every game, the disciplinary process of match review should only be for incidents that the referee couldn't have seen. So if somebody's taken out long off the ball and the referee's got their back to the play, absolutely call that up. But if, let's take it as an example, and people will say, oh, it's if Aidan Caesar has tripped somebody off the back of a scrum and Ben Thaler is stood next to Aidan Caesar when he does that and deems that it was non-intentional and not a penalty and gives in fact a knock-on against the person who was tripped, I think it undermines Ben Thaler as a referee for the disciplinary to effectively overrule that. But that's just my opinion.
I genuinely didn't see it, but I
wasn't paying
on the
ground
attention.
Paul Rowley did.
Yeah, he did.
And brought it up in the press conference, which he's perfectly at liberty to do. But I just think we're going to the point now where, fortunately Ben Thaler has got a Super League game this week. But, what are we going to do? We're going to keep saying to referees, we've overruled you, you're refereeing in the Championship. A, that's demeaning to the Championship. Why should they get somebody who isn't performing at a standard? But B, Ben Thaler's performance in that game was clearly good enough for him to have another Super League game. But what they've done with the match review panel is undermined some of the decisions that he made, which I don't get.
You probably say that the crowd might have had an influence. Not at Leeds. No, not at Leeds.
The South Stand.
Not.
But I think we do need to be a lot more discriminate in what the match review panel can look for, and that if clearly a referee has made a conscious decision in the full knowledge of the facts and been on top of the incident when it happened, I am now of an opinion that shouldn't be reviewed.
I'm trying to work out when Rhiannon Marshall's ban is up. She might be back either this week or next week for the Leeds game. That'd be tasty because that's the team she got banned against.
And used to play for.
Yes. I'm looking forward to that game in a couple of weeks. 3 weeks, I think. I don't know.
Is it a double head?
No, I think it's a standalone fixture.
That would be interesting to see how people turn up for that.
I need to work out how do I get in? How do I get into anything? Let me in. In the Super League this week, some games happened. They were all a week ago now.
I think some teams won and others lost.
They did.
Are we with your Wakefield hat on? Are we now convinced that Toulouse are going to get relegated?
Well, I mean, there was a discussion in the comments earlier on YouTube thinking that Wakefield are safe now, and I'm not. Technically, they aren't, are they? Obviously,
no. They're mathematically, they're definitely not.
I mean, could do with Warrington winning this week, couldn't we? But and the point is almost equal. Wakefield aren't going to beat Wigan on Sunday. You wouldn't think. When I put my predictions in this week, will I be putting Wakefield by 2? No, I'll be putting Wigan by 12 because you just pick a random number out of thin air. But I wouldn't think Wakefield will beat Wigan anyway.
Did you see enough when Toulouse played Hull KR this week, who had a lot of players out, to think that Toulouse can win 2 more games than Wakefield this year? Or 1.5 more games?
I think we'll be all right. I think we'll be all right. So I'm not concerned. Someone asked me the other day, and I just said, there's nothing I can do about it. I can't. I'm not on the pitch. I can't change anything that happens. So there's no point me getting annoyed by. There's plenty of things I've been annoyed by this week. And someone wise said to me a few months ago, we spend too much time getting annoyed about things we can't control.
Which is exactly, to be fair, what Darryl Powell said about Warrington. We can't change the course of history. We can only look at each next game and try and be better.
So I can get annoyed by those things, or I can ignore them. I can't change what happens to Wakefield this year. I still think we'll be okay. This should be okay. The quality of play in the squad should be okay.
I think that's the
Online
difference. Having looked at
I feel
another
sorry for
great
Toulouse.
opportunity for Toulouse. You can see that Corey Norman is a great player. You can see that Daniel Alvaro is a great player. But I'm just not sure they're big enough. Ollie Ashelbot is a fine player. But I don't think they've got the size to trouble even Warrington on Thursday.
I think I've been accused of being a stalker on Sunday, by the way, at Headingley.
Who are you still?
Apparently the women's teams. By Gemma Carter accused me.
Really?
I'm an accredited Rugby League journalist. I was on the BBC once. 4 years ago. 4 years.
You've been on national radio.
I was. You remember the radio? I did usually do the football results about and everything.
So I just think on that, the results of last week and feeding them into what might happen this week, that unfortunately Toulouse's race could well be run because of who they've got to play. They haven't travelled well this year, and that's to be expected. Catalan didn't initially travel well. It's a hell of a thing when you've not really been used. It's not that you're not used to it because they did it in the Championship, but you're not used to playing that intensity of game when you get here. So clearly that's been an issue for them. I just think they've had 3 opportunities at home to Salford, an out of sorts Hull, and then away at an injury-ridden Hull KR, where they had to get something to give you the hope that they're going to win at least 2 games to get themselves out. It's not done and dusted.
No.
If they were to pull off a shock win, because I think it would be a shock if they beat Warrington at Warrington.
The bookies would have it as a shock win?
That would throw a cat very much into a bunch of pigeons.
Shit.
But I don't think it's going to happen.
It reminds me of 2019 when all the neutral people wanted London to stay up, and we could have got rid of Wakefield, Hull, KR or Huddersfield, and as it turned out, no, we got rid of London. And it's going to be the same
And London
again.
so very nearly did themselves proud, but at the end of it, the element they were lacking was the fact that they just didn't have enough quality players to get them over the line.
Christian Wolf says we play too many games. I think some players have said it as well. I think Sam Tompkins said it.
1,000,000% right.
Unfortunately for Christian Wolf and Sam Tompkins is if they play less games, then the people who employ them are going to want to pay them less money.
Well,
Which shouldn't necessarily be the case.
Gary
but that's how it
Hetherington said that, didn't he? I mean, again, if you market the games to the point where you get more people in because there's a scarcity value, you can play less games. But it's hard to say that before you try it. And Leeds have announced a £2 million loss for last year. That's a lot of beans. Hull, another £1 million loss on the back of last year's £1 million loss. The figures that will come in will not look healthy because we are coming out of a situation where people couldn't use their grounds. It's going to take some time to filter sufficient money, and you can see why club chairmen would want to play more and more games to keep their cash flow going. But it is self-defeating. To have a double round at the end of August is ludicrous.
Especially because they moved all the games. Wednesday night, is it Leeds on a
Leeds
Wednesday?
Huddersfield. Yeah, which will help Leeds flying out to Catalan for the 3rd time to France in 7 weeks, which if the playoffs finish in a certain way, 2 weeks after that they'll be going out to France again for the 4th time. Which is ridiculous for players, fans, even broadcasters in some respects.
It's been another strange season.
It's the
I went
interesting
early at
thing
the
is,
end.
everybody is saying, particularly our primary broadcaster, it's been really exciting because we don't know who's going to win the League Leaders' Shield. We don't know who's going to, finish in the top 6 and the order they're going to finish in. We don't know who's going to get relegated, and we're only 5 weeks out from the end of the season. And that is every minute mattering, which is what we tried to get when we came up with a slogan. And in some respects, that end justifies the means. Where it doesn't is, what are we actually watching with terms of every team has not named 21 men at least once this year. Some of the games are tough to watch. You know, Catalan getting their win at Wakefield on Sunday. You know, Steve McNamara saying, in terms of bravery, that's one of the best wins he's ever been involved with, because they could barely stick a team out on the field. You know, all of that is fine and it's a story, but I'm not sure it's showing us in our best light.
Reserves are obviously working well then, aren't they? If they
really well.
if teams can't
really
name squads, top teams can't name 21-man squads. It's going really well. And he says, didn't London get relegated with about 20 points? They did. They won 10 games.
19, I think.
Is it not 19? And,
oh no, it might have been 20. Yeah.
Sid will point out 2 of them was against Saints because they played the reserves before reserves existed. Sid was not happy, by the way. He's not happy that Catalans and Toulouse on their official Twitter during games refer to the opposition as the English, which of course mainly they're not. They're all the Islanders, aren't just pretending, like the Australian national team. I was at Cass in 2000 and something. When did Catalans come into Super League?
2006.
So it would have been the year before or before that when they were pre-Catalans, UTC, and they played Castleford in the Challenge Cup. And when they came out onto the field, they played the frog chorus on the PA. So it's probably the French getting the run back. We'll grasp some
in those less politically correct times
of the early 2000s. I interviewed Graham Stedman after that, which would definitely tell you where he was because he was coaching Castleford at the time. Outside of, nothing much happened particularly. Did everything that happened that you'd expect.
Saints won, but again, are going through a period of not being convincing yet, which is good because it means that the impregnability that was around them, there's now a vulnerability, which, unless you're a Saints fan, is what we all wanted.
All lost, having been 10-0 up. They're a strange club.
And they play St Helens.
They do. So you'd expect that one to be a big win for Saints.
Well, I'm not sure. Who knows?
Phil says City's never happy. He's not. That's an Everton fan for you. It'll be money about VAR in a minute anyway.
He is funny though.
He's funny. York won at Dewsbury. Bradford beat Workington. Halifax beat Batley in the Telly game. So that's another big win for Halifax. Lee beat Barrow. London won at Newcastle, we mentioned. Another win for Sheffield. It is, isn't it? 44-0, as mentioned. They did miss 5 goal kicks as well, so that could have been even worse. Sheffield beating Whitehaven 38-26, which sounded like a cracking game. And Fev battling hard to beat Widnes, obviously coming off the back of that defeat to Barrow at the Bash the week before. But Fev getting over the line. It's all exciting. This week's Telly game, York versus Bradford in the Championship. I've seen that before in the Championship, is that my imagination?
Yeah, I think we have.
Fev are at home to
Batley
Dewsbury.
Barrow is the game of the round, I think.
Yeah, Fev at home to Dewsbury, Lee at Newcastle, so again you'd expect them to be a couple of big results from both of them. I know Fev have obviously struggled in recent weeks, but Dewsbury, it looks like they are going to be heading into whatever League One is next year. And of course, we almost put the mockers on Keighley by saying they were going up last week, and they nearly didn't win.
Is it this week mathematically they can, or is it the week after?
I don't know how many games they play in these divisions anymore, so someone tell us.
but they're 4 points ahead of North Wales with a game in hand. So I think if they win this week, they're virtually there, but they're not going to be caught.
Lot of people.
North Wales,
whose
coach Anthony Murray
is leaving,
even though they're second in the division and they're going to be most likely favourites in the playoff part, standing down at the end of the season. Bit of a surprise.
Yeah, they won at Cornwall. Was that on Sunday? I think it was. Doncaster beat Rochdale. London Scholars beat West Wales. Because everyone beats West Wales, apart from Cornwall. Midlands only just lost to Oldham.
That was a very high score game.
Had a good couple of weeks, the Hurricanes, haven't they? Are they going to be moving to that, the Olympic Stadium?
We're just looking at the Hurricanes' tries. They scored all of them from the hour mark. So 36 points. And the last try was 77 minutes. So in 17 minutes, they scored 36 points.
So when we reinvent this, the Summer Bash as some kind of 20-minute...
That's 3x3 stuff.
Yeah. 20-minute rugby. Just have 20-minute games. Could still be 13 aside, but just over 20 minutes. I don't know. And Swinton, yeah.
Upsetting. Good show.
Upsetting the coupon, because a lot of people were heavily on Keithley on the handicap on Sunday. But no.
But only scored a penalty in the second half. They couldn't add to their fine first half, the Lions.
Kevin says, exciting times for Lee as long as they don't blow it like Toronto did against London. Well, it's all down to that one game, isn't it?
And it's all down to who is fit on the day as well, because whilst everybody's fit, playing well, yes, they are justifiable favourites. But we've seen the carnage that injuries can wreak on teams, as indeed can the disciplinary. You're in a semi-final where you get 3 players sent off. It changes. Logic says, having seen Lee at the Bash, all the components you need to win that division are in place. But it ain't over yet. Mr. McDermott said in the press conference afterwards, we can beat Lee.
There you go. Just like he was going to say, but he didn't say, did he? He said afterwards he was going to say, after the game at Castle where they lost 1,000,000, they were going to win the grand final. But he didn't say it, did he? This is the thing now. He didn't say it, but he said he was going to say it, but he didn't say it. And they did win the grand final, because we remember that. I can't say Featherstone are not going to win promotion, which would be hilarious, because the Super League's going to be then full of teams from the WF postcode area, just taking over the world. But it's going to be Wigan or Wakefield dominating Super League next year. Kevin says Ben French is off to Leeds. He's off to Newcastle, isn't he?
Newcastle Knights.
Not Thunder.
Yeah. I think given the choice of options, he will get offered another deal at Wigan, but he wouldn't sign that because he's got a strong bond to Wigan for being, extremely welfare minded with the issues that he had when he couldn't come back. They really looked after him, and he appreciates that. And his mum, before she passed away, said you need to go back to Wigan and repay them. So I think if Wigan put an offer on the table, that's the one he would take if he was staying here. I suspect he's played that well that Newcastle Knights will be his destination for next season.
I mean, the big question coming out of Sunday heading was, when will Rowan Smith look at the league table? Because he doesn't look at the league table. Doesn't look at it. He's not interested. Leeds in 6th in that final playoff spot at the moment. Will they still be there after the weekend? We'll find out. Friday night, Hull KR versus Leeds on the telly.
Yeah. It's a big game for Rovers as well, because clearly they would go back into the mix for 6th, possibly take it depending on the other results. So yes, it's a huge game. Good
telly fixtures, aren't they? Warrington to lose, obviously, really, because we can all laugh at Warrington if they lose, or unless you're not from Wakefield, but it would be funny. You can still take pleasure in the pain of others. I think the Germans have a word for it. And on Saturday on Channel 4, I can watch the first half, but the second half I'm busy.
Are you reading the football?
I'm reading the football results. Yeah, reading the football results. If they hadn't told anyone they weren't going to do the football results, no one would have known. But they told everyone. I don't know why they've done that. It takes 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Because I used to when I was on Ridings FM, 5 o'clock, the news, right? Yeah. Then you've got a 2-minute gap, so you can either talk for 2 minutes, but it's commercial ready, so you don't. So you play Delamitri's role with me, which is 1 minute 58, straight into the classified football results at 5:05 on IRN. And it takes 2 minutes to read them. I mean, I don't do the Scottish ones on North Derbyshire Radio because I can't be bothered.
So you don't know how Cowdenbeath get on?
No,
any given week.
It's an Ashby on nil. I'm still see what Dumbarton are doing, because they've started the season well in League 2. Come on, Sons.
Is it Cowdenbeath who have dropped out of the league?
I think they did, yeah. So then they didn't even make it to the classified football.
No, not on it anymore. Some other team, is it Bonnyrigg now?
Yeah, Bonnyrigg Rose.
Where are they?
I mean, it's like
how do we get to talk about
it's like stuff? Teams in non-league football teams have names which you don't see in the Football League, and there's no reason for that.
Curzon Ashton.
Yeah, exactly. Stockport County had to come back into the Football League because they've got a football name. Harrogate Town are allowed in because they've got a football name, but Warby Tide are Curzon Ashton. Atherton Collieries. You can't have that in the Football League.
Stocksbridge United.
Stocksbridge Park Steels, yeah. Do they have, Carson, do you have the classified football results auf Deutsch? Do they have them in Germany or Switzerland or whatever? Because obviously this and the shipping forecast, it's the erosion of British values. I mean, I'm hoping, this obviously, football results. They don't do the classified rugby league results, do they? They don't do that. Mainly because all the games kick off at different times. Should play on Saturday afternoons like the olden days. When we used to have the rugby results, they used to put them on before, and then like Des would have to read out nonsense in the Courage Championship because it's the BBC. They don't like rugby league. They do like rugby league. Don't start that.
They've got a whole World Cup.
I've praised rugby league. I've praised the BBC's coverage of rugby league in the column I've written part of in this month's Forty20 magazine. Yeah, I mean,
it's in your name. You've written it all.
I've written it all. I've written all these words.
It's not quite in the order that you submitted them.
All of them. The most important words are mine. The best words are not mine, but they are in the magazine, which is coming out. It's now. It's out now. It's there. Look, because there's nothing else going on. I don't think. Make sure you download our podcast because we want to go back above the Rugby League World Cup. And James Graham, he's got a podcast as well. Keegan Hurst's got a podcast.
Has he?
Yeah. He's not playing for Batley though because they signed him too late.
Well, he is, but next year.
Yeah. I did enjoy the line which it says, it's in the paper, he's come out of retirement and play for Batley Bowlers again, a bid to boost LGBT representation in Rugby League, which there's plenty of in Rugby League, just not in men's Rugby League. And the T is the interesting one there, isn't it? But there you go.
Well, read Craig Lingard's column, and it doesn't say that. That isn't the reason he's come back.
Is that all just spin and spin?
Pure coincidence, I think, is the phrase that Mr. Lingard uses.
So they won't be wearing a rainbow kit next year, apparently. They only show the Swiss results on Swiss TV. They don't like foreigners.
Other than those that put lots of money in their bank but don't want everybody to tell them about
it. I mean, if they did the Swiss football results on grandstand, you'd be slightly concerned. Bring back the video printer noise, even if it's not
Is there
really
a Division 4 in Switzerland?
There must be. Kevin's concerned that they're getting rid of the football results but keeping the Archers. I think the Archers are probably more popular. I don't know. But they don't do classifieds on Radio 4, do they?
Why not have the football results on the Archers?
On the Archers, with Eddie Grundy and all the other people.
There you go.
Dave Archer, William Archer, Jeffrey Archer.
Peach Archers. Oh, that's smart.
If you know any of the Archers, we're done. Don't look at the league tables. Don't listen to the football results. Don't listen to any other podcasts. There's not enough time to listen to all these podcasts. Just listen to ours.
But we were back together.
We are. And if you just download the podcast, don't listen to it, delete it. Counts as a number. We'll be back. I don't know when we'll be back next week because I don't know what's going on. Because I genuinely don't know what I'm doing next week. But there will be a programme.
Every week.
Yeah, I know. There will be a programme. You might be under a pile of books. Well, the pile of books will have gone, obviously. There it is. Buy a book.
Listen, if you don't, not interested, listen to Beware of the Bull, after which the book is named, because it's actually Beware of the Bullshit, and it's never been more appropriate in the world we currently live in.
And I mean, there's a million things I could say after that, but for the benefit of my own mental health, I'm not going to say them. Thank you very much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your week. Let's all laugh at Warrington. Apologies, Andy, for saying laugh at Warrington, because you're actually one of our viewers. I mean, we haven't got that many. We can't be annoying you by saying we're going to laugh at Warrington. Warrington aren't going down anyway. And all these people, it's just the narrative on the television. Warrington are going, they're not going down.
They're not.
Because if they did finish bottom, they'd change it like if Leeds were.
No, they're not going to finish bottom.
Next time, more conspiracies here on the home of Rugby League podcasting, apart from all the other bits. Oh, Kevin mentions the Bradshaws. They're still going on the radio. James H.
Could they read the football results?
James H. Reeve used to play those. There's one for the